All right, how's everyone doing? Nice. All right, well, I'm Oscar, and I'm a product designer here at Figma, and I'm really excited to kick us off in taking a look at how to fast-track your design work with some of the new features we built. Now, after our big reveal yesterday with Dylan, it might not be a surprise. We're going to be doing a lot of this with AI. But we know that just bolting AI onto a product doesn't actually solve all our problems automatically. And that's why we actually want to focus today more on workflows than on AI itself. Understanding all those hiccups that come with using Figma, those little big things that take up our time, and the ways that we might help you to take some of that time back. Now, I want to set the stage here by talking about where our time goes when we go through the design process. Behind every piece of software that we ship is a tremendous amount of process. And consider how involved the journey to create even just one screen is today. Maybe you start by getting inspired, and that means pulling in references from your team or outside products that inspire you. Or you might be a start-from-scratch kind of person. Your time is spent wrestling the blank canvas as you kickstart your process by wireframing. Once you have a promising idea, the next step is actually filling in the gaps. And that means time spent with every letter, with each text box that you type, and doing the same as you carefully paste in all those photos that populate your design. Finally comes refinement, and that's another time sink. Going back and picking off revisions one by one, renaming all those layers so that your team can actually make sense of a messy file. And there might even be some polished tasks that, God forbid, require you to open other tools entirely just to get across the finish line. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that as designers who have gone through this creative workflow over and over again, we take some pride in being able to master this creative process. But being a designer also makes us have to ask, what if there's a better way? From starting out to those finishing touches, could we reinvent any of these moments? That line of thinking is what got our team brainstorming. Maybe there's something we could build to make it faster, define designs, and get a head start. Something to make it faster, to fill in all the gaps with real content. And something to make it faster for you to refine and get every detail perfect before you're ready for development. Right now, it's the long journey navigating these steps of the workflow that really makes it an uphill battle to turn a concept into a real product. And we think that by fast-tracking the tedious parts of this journey, we can bring designers a lot closer to the execution of their ideas. And it's this vision that makes me so excited to do a deeper dive today on the 8 features that we've built as part of Figma AI. So what do you guys think? Are you ready to dive in and take a closer look? All right, so let's head over to our demo laptop here, and we'll get it started in a live file by getting inspired. Let's wait for that to come up here. Here we are. So from talking to real users, we learned that it's especially those folks in larger design teams who really struggle to find designs when they start new projects. And our friends over at the Coda design team shared with us 3 true stories from this part of the workflow that you might be able to relate to. Our first story here is from Carlo, one of the product designers who was adding a few sections to the Coda homepage. And that can mean changing a few of these headlines or maybe a few of those graphics. But if you've ever had to be in Carlo's position, adding to an existing design, you probably know that your first step is to try and find where that file is. That can be a bit of a challenge when the average file looks something like this. So picture yourself trying to find that blue headline section. It can really feel like finding a needle in the haystack here. So we tend to just ask our team in Slack where the Figma file is. And that can be a little thrashy, and by the time the person actually has the answer, it's half a workday lost. With visual search, you're now able to find the source for a screenshot right in the Figma file. So we can pan over here, and I have that screenshot from Carlo's work. And instead of having to upload this to Slack, what I'll do is go down here to our beautifully redesigned toolbar, and we have this sparkle icon, which is the Actions panel. The Actions panel is going to be your one-stop shop for all of these AI actions. Clicking this, we can look for search for similar. If I go ahead and open that, you see we get a grid of results instantly that looks like a visual match for the screenshot we pasted. So if I insert this, let's go ahead and drag this off to the side here. You can see that we took a screenshot, and we actually have editable layers here that really allow us to dive in here and change things, like perhaps a few copy sections or replacing my own graphic. So that's pretty awesome. But my favorite way of using visual search is actually not just looking for screenshots of our production app, but looking for similar layers if I have something that's a work in progress. So you saw that demo from yesterday where Dylan drew an icon, but you can also do this with whole designs. Here's another story from the Coda design team, which is Kelly. And Kelly was redesigning this inserts panel here on their doc view, trying a few different ways of laying out these sections. She starts with a wireframe like this, where she's considering this concept of an expandable section. But just to get the concept out easier, she was using a few of these gray placeholders. Now, that might get her thinking, hey, well, someone's designed this before. Perhaps I can find some of the assets that the original author used so I can really fill this out and make it real. I showed you how to do this from the actions menu below, but I actually like to do this a faster way, which is just whenever I have this selected, it's also in the right-click menu. So if I go up here to search for similar, you see I get those results again, and I can take a look. From these Figma layers, I've actually found the original source file. It's a little tough to see the details, and when you have finer detailed designs like this, we have the preview button, which allows us to open a larger preview window so you can take a look. And this looks pretty much exactly like the structure that Kelly was playing with. I like to go a step further usually and actually open the original source file. So these aren't just static thumbnails that you have to evaluate in order to pull in them. You can actually open the original source file, which I'll do here in a new tab. And the reason I like to do this is to really understand the context that this design came from. Maybe it's part of a larger flow, or there might be a few options that were laid out by the original designer. So if I zoom out here, wow, the original creator of this seems to have meticulously considered like 8 different designs. So I can maybe take this one that I was originally inspired by, but we can also select a few of the favorites that it seems like the team also aligned on. So I'm just like shift-clicking here and multi-selecting that. And I like to do this so that I don't just insert one frame, but I can actually copy these, go back to my original file, and maybe paste in all of those. And this really gives me a great starting point to maybe remix a few of these different options. And this was from some existing Figma layers. So it's really cool that you can take a wireframe and start to riff from there by using our search features. With that said, we know that most searches in Figma, today at least, mostly happen in plain language, because we don't really have visual assets all the time. And that can really be a pain, because a lot of our design systems look something like this. Memorizing the exact keyword just to find the component you want to insert can be a bit of a task, and it takes a lot of time. And searching for it in the language that makes sense to you oftentimes doesn't really lead to reliable results. A classic example is finding illustrations in iconography. So this last story from the Coded Design team is Eddie, who's a brand designer, and he was working on a few of these illustrations for this sign-up screen. Now, rather than start from scratch, he probably knows that the brand team has done a bunch of illustrations before and has already made icons in the design system. But again, maybe if he's a newer designer, he might actually know what the keywords are to find those. That's not a problem anymore. I can go to the Actions menu, and under the Assets tab, what this will show me is anything that my team has published in a design system that's available to my workspace. So I can just type in plain language, illustration, and you can see we get a few different results here. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that none of these actually have the word illustration in the title. And we haven't actually had to load any synonyms or anything onto the component to get these results. So that means that you can just search for whatever you want in the language that makes sense to you. Let's go ahead and drag that out. You can try this graphic here. And looks like I've actually missed an icon here. Iconography is like one of the most difficult parts of using design systems today for me, because you often get those really obscure numbers in the layer name. So here, let me go ahead and search again in the Assets tab. And since we're looking at an email field, we can search for email and take a look. We get a label, an @ symbol. I like this envelope. And none of these actually have the word email in it. So it conceptually understands what I'm looking for in my design system, and it's able to find that in a quick jiffy. So we can go ahead and make that gray. One tip here that I really like is if you were a fan of the Inserts menu, which I certainly used a lot before, you still have access to Shift-I. And when you hit that keyboard shortcut, you actually get a much larger view of this. And I can do the same actions, like searching for icons. So you can see a lot bigger of a grid. And you're totally free to also filter through specific libraries if your team has a couple of those. So that's a few of our search features. And you can see with these 3 stories, we've actually gotten a couple designs out from some of the things that are already going on in the Coder workspace using the assistance of our search features. But there's also those cases where we don't have any designs at all. And that's why we created Make Designs, which allows you to create a design right from a prompt. Here, we don't have any backstory. We're just going to face this blank canvas down together and think about ways that we can create something completely from scratch. So I'll go back to the Actions menu here. We'll click Make Designs, which is the first one over there. And you see we get this prompt box. And what's really cool is I can pretty much ask for anything. We've really focused our designs so far on desktop websites and mobile apps. But within those, that's a pretty broad range of things that you're able to create. I generally like to follow this prompt structure of asking for a page type and an app type. And that will generally give Figma a pretty good idea of what you're trying to make. So maybe let's start with a website. How about a plan comparison page for an issue tracking software? And you can see here that structure, page type, and app type. And it will actually try to detect from the prompt whether this is going to be a mobile app or a website. But if I want, I can also be extremely specific, going to the left corner here and clicking whether I specifically want it to be mobile or web. So let's go and say web, since we're trying to make a website. And we'll hit Make It. All right, so we got our frame streaming in on the canvas here. You can see it's adding all those plan cards, and it's already populated this with a few example features. Wants to be pretty ambiguous about the price there. I wonder how expensive that plan is. And what's really cool is it actually understands how to keep these content consistent across the whole design. So notice how the pricing and the features are actually the same between this cards and the table that it added. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. And it knows that these vary across the plan, so it filled in that. It added an FAQ section and a footer. So in just a few clicks, I have a really great first draft. And this allows me to maybe riff and get a few ideas on top of this going. What you see here is like these 6 tiles, and those allow me to check out a few different styles if I want to get inspired by different visual directions that I can take this design in. So maybe we can choose this one here, which is like this organic serif look. This one looks interesting. It's like a really brutalist bitmap font. OK, this one looks a lot like some of the websites I see nowadays. But all of these are just sort of varying it on things like color and font. I want to show you how you can do these individually by changing a few of those properties according to whatever custom set that you want. So I'll go back to the basic generation here. And if I hit Make Changes, I have a few different controls available to me that allow me to change those properties I mentioned before, which are color, corner radius, spacing, and font. One thing that's really cool is we have this toggle that instantly allows you to change from light mode to dark mode. And notice how I don't have to change any variables or set any variables up myself in order to get this to happen. I can also do things like change the swatch. So right now it's branded with this sort of blue color across the buttons and the backgrounds, but I can change it to something like red or green or yellow. Or if I have a specific brand color in mind, maybe I'm working with something that has a little bit of an established system, I can actually go to the custom swatch here and pick any color I want. So you can see how this is actually changing across the whole design. One thing that's really cool here is that we're actually adjusting for minimum contrast so that the text is always legible. So if I have this like bright green color, you can see that it shows black text. But as I switch, it knows when to choose white and knows how to tint it without me having to do anything. With the corner radius feature here, I can change things like how round these look. So I can choose something that's maybe a little sharper or super round. I tend to like it when it's super round. My favorite one to play with is the spacing. Spacing allows me to make a design that's super dense or super spacious. And it's actually changing these across every auto layout in this for me, so I don't actually have to go in and do that. And by the way, all these generations come out with auto layout, so they are immediately responsive. And finally, we have the font tab. The font tab allows us to change things like the title. Maybe I want to change it to a different sans serif. I'll make that consistent. And we can also do things like change the font on the buttons. And it does that across the whole design. All right, so I have a really great first draft here. I can start to riff from there. I also want to show you how we can do this with a mobile app. Again, I'll go to Make Designs. And this time, we'll go to this corner here. And we'll select Mobile App Kit. And let's ask for a chat page for a messaging app, again, following that structure. But I can also add any additional pieces of content that I feel are really important to this output. So for instance, let's have it be about 2 friends planning a Config 2024 after party. And we'll go ahead and click Make It. And you see that it streams in the frame there, and it's going to fill in these messages with the content that I specified in the prompt. Looks like they're talking about a rooftop after party. I know a few of those happened this week. And we'll wait for this to finish. We get the same controls that I showed you before, so we have 6 different options I can cycle through. But I actually want to show you a really cool part of Make Changes, which is the ability not only to use these controls, but to specify any changes you want in plain language. So we can do things that are a little more ambiguous, like, for instance, if I wanted to convert the entire conversation to be about something else, I could do that here. So it seems like right now they're planning the venue, but we could make it about, well, confits are kind of a big theme this year, so maybe let's make it about planning outfits. Change all the messages to be about planning outfits. And we'll hit Make Changes here. Let's watch what it does. And you can see it actually changed it from just talking about the venue to having these people in the conversation coordinate the outfits. So I don't actually have to do any of that copywriting if I'm not a copywriter. One other thing I can do with Make Changes is actually make any changes that are more like stylistic things, or sort of those hard to describe ones that can't exactly be tied to just a color or a font. You know, I've freelanced before, and I often get these really crazy client requests, like make it pop. So how about we try that one? All right, let's see how the AI handles that one. Wow. I don't know what you guys think of that. It's like this really bright mustard green. Do you think the clients will love that? It's OK. We can come up with a story to pitch it to them later. All right, so you can see that we have 2 cool designs here. And what this really allows me to do is get to a really great starting point so that I can now apply my creativity and change these in any direction I want. Let me show you a few of the things that are possible here. Here's one example of an e-commerce page. And again, basically, I want to show you here that you just have to ask for the page type and the app type, and we can generally do a good job of that. We have a dashboard page, long-form content, onboarding pages. On the mobile app side, here's one for a San Francisco weather app, a podcast app, a food delivery app. So a ton of things is really possible here, and that makes us really excited about really speeding up that initial part of the workflow where you have to get a few designs out just to get concept alignment. So that's the end of the first part of the demos. And let's go back to the slides for a second. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so what really makes us excited here is that with new ways to search and create a design from a prompt, it's faster than ever to get inspired. And now comes the next start of the process, which is filling in the gaps. And for that, I'd like to hand it over to Cemre.
All right, we can head back to the demo laptop. Hey everyone, my name is Cemre. I'm a product lead at Figma, as Rachel mentioned, formerly a designer. We all know that populating our designs with realistic content is important, but candidly, it's not always top of mind for us. We're all guilty of sticking lorem ipsum in our designs and then sometimes even forgetting them there. But luckily, with our new AI features, this could be a thing of the past. Let me show you how. If you remember, we were looking at this travel app yesterday in the keynote. Let's design a new screen where you can book excursions. But before I do this with AI, let me actually show you. I recorded this video of doing this manually. This is a 25 times sped up video. And as you can see, I'm not even typing all this stuff. I'm copy pasting from a search engine. I used a chatbot. Even then, it took me over 7 minutes to go from this stub design to one that has all the content in it. Let's now see how much faster it is to make this with Figma's new native AI features. And to make this a little more fun, I made this stopwatch so we can all count down in real time. Cool. Are you ready? So start with the title. Let's say rewrite. Write an editorial title for a hidden gems tour in Sydney. Perfect. I'm going to do the same thing now. Write a description for a hidden gems tour in Sydney. Mention specific locations. Cool. OK, so this is the magic part. Pay attention. I'm going to select this one card. Going to make let's say 6 duplicates. I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to hit Shift-A to put them in their own auto layout. Notice Figma suggested to replace content. Let's click and see what happens. Drum roll. Boom. Look, now, yes, I think this deserves a clap. Yeah. As you can see in a second now, we have all this very realistic looking content with countries, cities, landmarks. It's awesome. And to round this out, I'm going to add an image here using the make an image command, inspiring cover image, showing a tourist exploring a city. I'm going for like a cliche picture of someone with a round hat carrying a map, as if we don't have phones anymore. Let's see what AI creates here. Yes, yeah, exactly. All right, cool. So stop the timer. As you can see now, in almost a minute and a half, something that took me over 7 minutes is now dramatically sped up. And I'm so excited that we're going to save you all of this time in your day-to-day workflows. Yes, I know, I'm excited too. Let me now give you some more advanced tips about how you can use these features in Figma. For rewrite text, one of my favorites is you can actually use it on multiple text nodes at once. So here I have lorem ipsum amenities for this real estate page. I'm going to use Command-Shift to multi-select them. I'm going to say write amenities for a single family home for sale. OK, this is good, but it's a little too long. I can do 2 things here. I can either use this undo button and then write a more specific prompt, or we can say make changes and say shorten to 2 to 3 words. Perfect. OK, this is exactly what I wanted here. So fast. Yes. And I showed you a moment ago how to create images from scratch, but you could also use this to replace things that are placeholders. So I'm going to select this gray rectangle. I'm going to say make an image, real estate photo of a single family home in San Francisco. And notice that the title of this layer actually got changed to the prompt. So if you want to recreate this or tweak it later, just notice it's right there. And I have 4 options here of very San Francisco-looking homes. Another pro tip, if you like all of these and if you can't decide, you can actually click and drag these. You can save them to your canvas for later. And I know that many of you are familiar with using AI to generate images that are photorealistic, like these ones, but let me give you a couple other use cases that I find super helpful in product design contexts. I love make image to create profile photos. Very helpful if you're creating a social app, and you can use playful styles like claymation. It's great to show your designs in context. If you are pitching a new app idea and want to make a storyboard, you could use it to create sketches. It's also great for more abstract background images. Awesome. So that's it for text and image features. Let's now do a deep dive on replace content. OK. And I'm going to admit something here. In all of these demos, we are creating playful, fun, colorful mobile apps. But realistically, many of us are looking at designs like this all day that are dense. They are full of information. They are such a pain to fill in. And honestly, maybe a table like this may have been the final straw before I quit being a designer. Just kidding. Let me draw your attention to how I set this table up. If you noticed, there's an auto layout container that contains 4 rows. These rows have an identical structure. That's key. They have different text, but all of them have the same frames inside. So whenever now you select a container like this, you're going to notice a handle on the bottom right. We call this the magic handle. You can click and drag this. Yeah, I think this also deserves an applause. Thank you, AI. And if you remember, I did not name any of these layers in a specific way. So I did not tell Figma, This is an IP address. This is a time. Figma actually figured it out, and all of these results, if you can see, look pretty realistic. It's very difficult to tell which ones came from AI and which ones were real. That I think is really rad. But we know that many of you that create tables in Figma actually lay them out more like this, like column-wise. Luckily, replace content also works for this use case. Again, I have this auto layout container here. It has all these columns inside. Whenever you select one of these containers, you can click and drag, and it's going to, again, generate all sorts of different kinds of data, like real estate unit mixes, availability, price, you name it, without writing a single prompt. This looks OK, but it looks a little generic, right? These street names, company names, kind of boring. Now let me show you how you can tell Figma to tweak things a little bit. Click Make Changes, and then let's say something like use funny names inspired by dog breeds. Let's see if AI is any good at dad jokes. Now you can see we have street names that are dog breeds. We have company names. They're not funny, but that's OK. AI is not taking our jobs, after all. So I showed you a couple examples of using replace content with tables that are already there. Let me now give you a couple tricks about how you can tweak your designs so that they work better with replace content. Many of you have designs like this, where you have a row and then a divider line that's separating these rows. It's super easy to change these into a format that works with replace content. Just select the row and the divider, Shift-A, another Shift-A, another Shift-A. As you notice now, this container has 3 identically structured children. And then now I will have a handle here. I can click and drag this, and then Figma will populate this with songs and artists, which is awesome. All right, sure. This is my final and most advanced set of deep dive tricks about replace content. Let's look at this table. This is a pretty complicated table. And if you notice, this row has 3 pills in it. There's a button, so they don't have an identical structure. What to do? Luckily, Oscar here taught me a trick that I'm happy to share with you. You can select one of these rows. Let's just duplicate that. And then I'm going to select them and then press Shift-A to temporarily wrap them in an auto layout. Notice Figma offered to replace content. Let's click that. Cool, that worked. But something happened here that I'm not entirely happy about. If you noticed, some of the status cells got changed to inactive, but they're green. That doesn't make sense. Let me show you how we can tell Figma to keep certain things fixed as you use replace content. The magic handle actually works in both directions, so you can click and drag it up to quickly delete stuff as well. And then the trick here is you can select any layer that you want to remain fixed, and then you can just lock it. So this one I will lock, this one I will lock. Now I'm going to go back and duplicate these table rows. And I showed you how to use this suggestion, but let's say we forgot to press it. No worries at all. Anytime you select a container that has these identically structured children, you can open the Actions menu and then use Replace Content. And as you see now, all of the status and services cells are the same. Everything else got replaced. And after this is done, I can use Command-Shift-G to ungroup these. And now I have all these table rows. I can, move these around if I want a little more visual interest in my design. Great. So this concludes all of my tips for writing text, creating images, and replace content. And hopefully with these, lorem ipsum will be a thing of the past. And with that, I'm excited to hand it off to Mallory, who's going to tell us a little more about putting the finishing touches on our designs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cemre. OK, so we're going to go back to the keynote for a second. So Now we are starting to feel good about our designs, right? We were able to quickly replace that content, make them feel a little bit more applicable to our actual work. So we're at the finish line, right? Maybe we've even sprinted to get here. We're getting pretty tired, and we're just needing to tie up a few loose ends. This is what we call our finishing touches section. At this point, we are hoping to be mostly done, but what often happens is we encounter a file like this. 10, 20, 30 comments come in with last-minute feedback, questions, or design tasks, and oftentimes that last 20% of the design process feels like 80% of the work. Those tedious tasks were the perfect opportunity for us to weave in AI. Let's jump into a demo of those common problems and how we imagine to support you in those moments. All right, back to the demo. Awesome. So as you can see here, I'm back in my design file. I have some comments, and it looks like I have some imagery that needs to be addressed. Zooming in, we're needing to change this background here of this image. It's colliding with our text, and I think we can use remove background for this, a perfect example. So if I go down to the actions panel here, I'm going to select remove background, and you'll notice that subtle animation popping in to let us know that it's going ahead and removing it. And within a few seconds, we have a pretty nice asset to work with, and I can just come in and adjust it to make a really good hero section. Great, we can already move on. Coming down here, I have another asset, and it's looking like more of a just hand-drawn sketch. But we still have that background, and we're wanting to have it as a visual element on top of our photograph. This time, I'm going to show you how to use remove background through another entry point. You can go over to your fill settings, and within the image settings, you'll notice that remove background icon is available to you here as well. Once I click it, it's going to perform the same action, but just another entry point if you're looking for that there. Pretty cool. I want to draw your attention really quickly to your fill layers over here. You'll notice that every single time you remove background, that removed background image is going to be on top at full opacity, and your original source image is always going to be there for you to reference underneath at 0% opacity. So no worries, you can always go back and revert. This is what we call, once again, remove background. It's there within the actions panel in the fill settings. But one final tip with remove background is that it actually detects fake PNGs. So I don't know about you. I've gone online many times looking for a transparent background for a logo or something. And what I've done is I've just brought it into Figma, and it looks a little something like this. Ooh. And I'm like, whoop, I got to go back online. But good thing is, if you were paying attention, right as I brought it in, it said remove background. I didn't even have to go into the actions panel. It detected it for me. And if I can zoom in and see this lovely, delicious kind of looking croissant here, in a few seconds, it's going to be able to remove that background for me. There we go. So, pretty cool. All right, my next design with comments is addressing more of these copy tweaks I have. Let's look at the first one down here. That's a lot of text, so let's see if we can shorten it. Opening up the actions panel, I have a few options, but we have a specific action specifically for shortening text, and let's give it a whirl. Pretty quickly, I was able to take those 5 sentences and bring it down to 2 and still keep that context for Cape Town top attractions. One thing to also note is that if I wanted to be more specific, I could always go back into rewrite this, which is a separate text tool available for you, and make it more specific. So I could say, make this shorter to 2 lines instead of 4. You can really use rewrite this to tailor exactly the result you want. All right, let's address our last comment over here. Looks like we have one last placeholder headline. I'm not the best writer, so let's see what rewrite this can do. I'm going to select this text here and say a headline for top destinations in southern Argentina, and rewrite. Awesome. And I want to drag your attention to these 3 cards. they're in an auto layout frame. So what it did is it took that context, it took that copy pattern from the rest of them down here, so discover the tradition, discover the best, and it also brought it up to the top. Really, really cool, in my opinion. But what I really like to do with rewrite is drag out another option. Let's just drag it out to the side, click back on it, and I want to go back and just riff on this, right? I can always go back to rewrite this, click on my recent prompts, and generate another option. So if you're always feeling like you're going to lose your prompt, don't worry. It'll probably be in that icon in the recent prompts. And I can keep generating and bring in my teams to come in and decide the best headline for us. OK, Oscar, when did you send this? So I thought I was done. But I guess we need to translate our design to Japanese, and I'm not the expert here. So let's see if we can go back to our design. I'm going to select the whole thing, open the Actions panel, and looks like we have a translate option for us. You'll notice we have a plethora of languages available, some that are even regionalized. Let's find Japanese and zoom in on our screen as it updates in real time. And you'll notice that every single text node is updating within the top-level frame that I selected. Pretty quick and easy to contextualize and localize my work. So to wrap up this little section, that's what we call our AI text tools. Once again, you can utilize them throughout your entire design process. I know that Cemre showed a little bit of it to generate placeholder text. But for me, I use it all the time to go back, rewrite, make small changes, and it's just my favorite part of the workflow. OK, so who remembers this tweet? I know it was pretty controversial, but I actually agreed with it up until rename layers. I'm kind of thriving in chaos all the time, and I leave my renaming moments to the end. That's why I put it in finishing touches. And that's exactly what I did here. Zooming in, I have a pretty long frame here, and I'm going to open up this layers panel and kind of expose myself. Check out my layers. Frame 143016139, followed by another one nested, and another. I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at, and I have to give this to my team so they can work with me, right? Let's just run rename layers. It's really awesome. Let's give it a whirl. Before I click this, I want you to just pay attention to the layers panel. And if you have time to peek at the actual design, you'll notice that on my screen, they're going to be highlighting in blue boxes exactly those layers that are renaming in real time. So we have 100 layers to rename. Yeah, there we go. Featured trip container, nav bar, itineraries container, and all within like 20 seconds. Awesome. So even if this isn't the traditional naming conventions you would utilize within your process, it's a great start. It's great to get a little bit better work that you're looking at rather than just referring to container or frame 104. So moving on, that is once again rename layers. A few tips before we wrap up rename layers is that right now you might hit a limit of 200 layers per selection. So just keep in mind you can keep running this if you have a little bit larger designs. We do skip some layers in the renaming process. So any layer that you intentionally renamed yourself, we're going to skip that. Locked and hidden layers will be also skipped. And then vector layers will be skipped unless you put them in a frame or a group, and then they will be kind of detected as icons or illustrations. We also will name your component instances, but we will keep those layers that are nested within your component instances intact. And one last thing, if you are like me and you duplicate your frames and have them spared all across the frame and the file, one thing we will do is if you click on the first any of those frames, really, we're going to rename those layers across all of your file with those similar layers. And that is because we want to keep that consistency, and we're not trying to break your smart animate. We know you spent a lot of time setting that up. So we're going to keep those consistent, even if you just select one of those duplicates to rename. All right. So I have one last task, and Cemre is kind of like making me hate my life right now. I have a client meeting in an hour, and I need to prototype this. I am really not good at prototyping, but I think we can utilize AI for this as well. So let's hop back into the file. Good thing is we're not working with too big of a flow here, just an onboarding, simple flow. But I still want to use my time to make sure it's properly running. So I'm going to select the whole section here, hop into the Actions panel, and let's select Make Prototype. And if you take a look at the screen, it's going to really quickly generate those interactions on my CTAs. And within a few seconds, it should be wrapping up with my back buttons as well. Now you'll see we are in that review state. If you squint a little bit, you'll be able to see there's a little icon underneath our cursor. And we've made some improvements to this prototype review state. So I can automatically click Preview, and I can tab through and follow that active frame. What I really like about this state is I can click on any of these generated interactions. It's going to tell me the trigger and the destination. I can come in and overwrite this as well, or I could just simply remove it if it's not working for me. One other thing about this state is that we improve that actual target for what you're clicking on when you're wiring up your prototype. So previously, you may have elements like this that were a little bit hard to catch and actually get that target because you have nested icons or text. Now we're just looking for that outer shell to make it really fast for you to bring these out and wire up your design. So just some small improvements that are going to really make our lives easier. Awesome. So that is Make Prototype. It's one of my favorites, but I want to keep in mind that Make Prototypes, like Make Designs, we look at as a good first pass. If you don't get it the first time, you can always do a smaller selection and run Make Prototype again, and your creativity is going to be really key here. We're hoping to get rid of those tedious tasks of wiring up all your CTAs, your nav bar, et cetera, and so you can spend that time working on animations and any of those transitions. All right, back to the slides. Awesome. So let's recap what we just walked through together. No matter what your creative process looks like, there are moments we can fast track to stay in that flow state. We started with Oscar, the beginning stages of creative work when you're looking to get started. Perhaps you start with visual search to find the right reference or inspiration from other work on your team. Or maybe some days you're stuck and you have a blank canvas, so you use Make Designs to get a good first draft. We then turned over to Cemre, who walked us through some half-completed designs that needed some extra content to make them feel complete. At this stage, we were dealing with still some placeholder text and images, so with a combination of rewrite this, make an image, and replace content, we were able to get relevant content for our designs and use AI to do some additional riffing. Then, once we felt in a good place, we were at our finishing touches. By utilizing text tools, updating imagery with remove background, renaming those pesky layers, and getting a good first pass at our prototype, we were feeling pretty good. And with all these features we went over today, you can access them within the Actions panel, that secret sauce for finding that right AI feature to keep you in that flow state. From the keynote to other talks and our deep dive, you've heard about how Figma thinks about AI, how other companies incorporate it, and now hopefully you can form a vision of where it fits in for you. Thank you.